to the Tavern After Dark, where we talk about the things lurking in the shadows, the things that go unsaid, the raw, real, and unfiltered stories of past, present, and future, the triumph and silent battles we face.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Tavern After Dark. We're joined by someone who has lived through battles of service, injury, coaching, rebuilding identity, somebody who really helped me come out stronger, and I know he himself has come out stronger. I really want to pull this in today because I think it's important that we focus not just on, let's say, the U.S. Army, but right, the whole aspect of the Air Force, right? So our guest tonight here, Colin Hundt, he is from the Air Force. He had some life choices, right? Some stories, journeys. I want to really dive into that today for all of you. And he was a lot of help to me and embodied a lot of things that I kind of thought about. You know, I made a post about it just earlier today. Colin, I used to drive by, you know, it would be like a 45-minute drive for me to work, but driving by, I would see him every day running to PT, you know, and he's not driving up, showing up in the parking lot. You know, he's not there to just show up. He works his way there, and then he takes his lunch, you know, and there's a lot of people who may have not taken that opportunity, Colin. And I know, you know, you and I kind of talked about that, but you took your lunch out of your way. You know, most people just say, hey, I'm going to go take my lunch. Like, I'm going to go do me. But you decided to step in and be like, hey, I'm going to also run a PT, you know, workshop, whatever it might have been that day at lunch. And I know you took a lot of opportunities to help out the soldiers. So I want to dive into you, Colin. First and foremost, can you give a brief introduction to who you are?
Sure. Yeah. So from a small town, Wisconsin, grew up there. My parents were together for the first 10 years or so. And I'd say through those first 10 years of my life, my development was rather stunted due to the environment. I don't want to get too much into the family life because
Yeah, no worries.
I can paint bad pictures, but they're not bad people. But anyways, a lot of addiction, and you know the stuff that follows addiction. You know, we're a working class family, so a lot of stuff comes with that. So for many reasons, I think my development was stunted. Anyways, getting back to the question of who I am, to give you a background of how I grew up. So after my parents got divorced, and I lived with my dad, and I got at that point, it started to become I had the ability to be more independent, and I kind of thrived under that independence to make my own choices.
Okay.
Of course, I take
If
on
you
a
wouldn't
little
mind me
more.
asking real
Yeah,
quick, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to ask a
sure,
question because I've dealt with that. It kind of
sure.
similar. I started my life. There's no memory of like my dad being when I was a child, right?
Yeah.
He's in my life. He's there, right? So I wanted to ask you from your perspective, broken home in that sense. What side of the family? I'm just curious because my mom really stepped up for me.
hmm
So I want to ask for you: was it your mom or your dad who kind of stepped up, or was it both? Right, it could be
Um,
both. So I'm just curious.
yeah, more so my dad. Mom
Okay.
has a lot of mental health issues that causes her to be maybe a little more distant than she would like. But she has trouble
Right.
and struggles
Okay.
with a lot of things like of that nature. Um, Dad still struggled at that time with drinking and gambling a lot. So there's still a lot of issues with that. But like I said,
Okay.
under Dad's living with Dad, I was able to be more independent, and I had to take on a little bit more responsibilities due to his choices, my brother's choices. I'm the youngest of three, by the way, for that record. Two of my
Okay.
oldest brothers are half brothers. So yeah, very
Brothers.
much
Okay.
a little bit of a bit of a broken family with kind of immediate family scattered about a little bit. Um, yeah. So after they divorced, I was able to kind of start to pursue what I enjoyed to some extent. Up to that point, I didn't really have much going on, and I was very insecure about just about everything. Um, Eventually, I started to get into sports. Track and field was
Okay.
probably the first one I got into in middle school.
What
I
event?
start. How was that?
What event in track and field?
Tried a little bit of everything. I tried multiple different field events, so high jump, long jump. I even tried shot put and discus, even though I was a very small, skinny kid.
Hey,
I
you
did,
know.
yeah, I did
Okay, cool. So go on. Yeah.
I did a little bit of distance, and some sprints. I like sprints at the time, not the fastest kid, but yeah, I really didn't like distance running at the time, which, being an ultra marathoner is kind of, funny, thinking I didn't like running distance when I was younger. I got into football
Right.
shortly after that. Then really what, got me going was, so when I started high school, still was very insecure. Didn't really have much belief in myself. But there was a teacher, coach, a powerlifting coach at my high school. Kind of,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
he just, I don't know what he saw something in me, but he convinced me to do powerlifting. Um, yeah, I worked really hard in powerlifting and kind of thrived and did well. I was a state qualifier for a few years. Nothing,
Oh,
no
that's
crazy,
awesome. Okay.
no crazy numbers, but powerlifting is what got me into fitness in general. And they'll kind of tie in later. Uh, yeah, so I got involved in the powerlifting. I got involved with other school organizations. I got involved with FFA, if you're familiar with Future Farmers America. I got involved with a couple with a mentoring program, and some other stuff through school. I started getting involved with a lot of co-curricular stuff, essentially. Once I was able
Okay.
to, once I explored these things, and that was great in my development for uh, self-belief and also leadership styles. Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bit of my background, prior to entering the Air Force.
Okay, so let's yeah, I love that. And I think I want to add on because I think
Sure.
what really helped you kind of direct yourself in life, like you said, was that coach,
Mhm.
that teacher. And I had somebody like that when I was in high school. His name
Mhm.
was Mr. Diaz. He was the football coach. But he was the one who really first got me into powerlifting, and it was a class you could take in high school, right?
Mhm.
So it was a great class, but I feel like he was somebody for you who really guided your direction.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Seppage was my coach teacher. Yeah, he very much old school mentality, and
Yep.
he had a thing a way about him that could rub people the wrong way. He also had a presence that would intimidate people. Um, but he was good to me, and he was definitely a big factor in how the trajectory of my life has gone. So.
Well, perfect. And I'm glad you had that because I think that's a big part about our youth, right? You felt lost initially,
Mhm.
and you found that one individual or somebody who could kind of put you back on the right track.
Mhm.
And so I love that, and I enjoy that you found that because I feel you in so many ways. Like a broken home is hard to uh, find a lot of confidence in yourself, I guess,
Mhm.
because you don't have maybe the attention that a full family has, and
Mhm.
so it definitely is tough dealing with that. And so I want to know more, Colin, about you in the sense of so you joined the Air Force. What really triggered that? So did part of your history with that coach who drove you into powerlifting was that part of your decision, or what really led you to the Air
No,
Force?
that's a complicated one actually. So I think when I first made the decision to enlist, I think I was actually 13 in eighth grade. There's a career fair
Oh wow,
project,
okay,
like all these
yeah.
classes you do these things.
Like,
I
what do
didn't
you
know what
want to be when you're older? The career
yeah.
fair, right?
So like
Yeah, okay,
I really didn't know. I hadn't I was bullied a lot when I was younger too. That was some context I left out. A lot of bullying, which led to a lot of my insecurities. Um, and
I
I was kind of
I
insecure
feel you.
about
My heart goes
yeah.
out, man.
Because I was insecure about a lot of passions. Like I love biology. I love I love stuff like that. A lot of those passions were suppressed because I was insecure about those things. So when I'm going to this
Right.
career fair,
You felt you felt judged in many ways? Is that
yeah,
what you I just curious because
yeah,
okay,
essentially,
that's kinda how I felt. Okay, yep.
yeah.
But yeah, go
Um,
on.
So during this like career project, more of a career project, not a career fair, um, I I wasn't secure in admitting like, hey, I want to be like a marine biologist. Like that would have been or a park ranger or something like that would have been a career that I really would want when I was younger, but I suppressed those. But But anyways, so I was looking around for cool careers, and I saw like special forces or something. So I put that as my career choice kind of thing in 8th grade. And I kind of
You know,
essentially just as time went on through middle school and high school, I just kind of continuously dived in, like, yeah, I'm going military right after high school kind of thing. Um,
right.
so that was and eventually it evolved over time. Like at first I was like a dead set Marines, and I'm like, oh, I'll go Army. You know, a lot of people saying, a lot of veterans that I knew in high school, like teachers or coaches, that like, ah, you should go Air Force. And so I kind of went back and forth over time. Um, yeah, and yeah, I actually essentially went Air Force, ultimately wanted to go AFSOC or Air Force Special Operations. I
Right.
ultimately wanted to do that. Specifically, I wanted to be a PJ or a pararescue. Um, yeah. So I mean, that's before I enlisted, so I don't know how we want to go into that, but yeah, that of course didn't really work out very well, which we'll get into more, I'm sure.
No worries. No, I appreciate you kind of sharing with us what kind of led you that path. And I think, when we're young, right? Especially when we're, let's say, lost, I
Hmm.
think in many ways, we don't have a direction,
Hmm.
we're unsure, and we stick on something that really calls to us,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like that's something that happened for you. And so I definitely want to hit on when we talk about your intro, right? You're moving into the Air Force. What was that like for you? So you were young, and
Hmm.
how old were you when you joined?
I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, I
Mhm.
was 30, right? So
Sure.
that's the perspective, right?
Yeah.
But, for me, like I said, seeing you there day in and day out, one of the young guns, but it wasn't so much that, for me being an older guy, I was seeing you show up and be there,
Hmm.
and I feel like in so many ways that kind of developed who you were in the Air Force. And so I want to talk about what the Air Force, in I guess one regard, let's say summarized paragraph, what did the Air Force give you and what did you take out of it?
Um, what did it give me? Of course, it gave me perspective. Yeah, so the brief summary of 6 years in the Air Force, you see leadership styles you like, you see leadership styles you like and don't like, you agree with, disagree with. You see policies that make no sense, but you still have to follow. Uh, you see
Yeah.
you see the logistics of a large organization, um, and it doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's the way things are, so it's the way you do things. Uh, so with that in mind, with those ideas and principles in mind that I just outlined, I essentially formed the mindset of from the Air Force, be the change you want to be, lead by example, and also Air Force core value integrity first. I actually do like that one, integrity first.
Yeah.
So those are some of the big things that I really took away from the Air Force. There are other things, of course, as
Okay.
well. Just
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. So the one thing I want to focus on, because I love that you brought that up, and something that I've approached, and I think we feel it regardless of what branch.
Hmm.
There's always areas where we're like, man, why why don't they get it? Why are they making that decision? And
Hmm.
sometimes we may not know because obviously it goes higher up,
Yep.
right? We don't know realistically why it happens,
Yeah.
but we know that there are a lot of decisions that are made that could be made differently, right? We know that. And I think that goes with business, that goes with politics, that goes with anything,
Yeah.
right? There are decisions that we could make that are essentially more informed
Yep.
or and I want to talk about something I posted the other day, which is the W6 protocol. And it's the who, what, where, when, why, but more importantly, the how,
Hmm.
right? And so if you think about every mission, everything that you did in the Air Force or everything that I did in the Army, right? There are all those questions that we can ask, and we can be like, all right, who's involved? We can be like, okay, what are we doing?
Hmm.
Where are we doing it? When are we doing it? Why are we doing it? But nobody really asks the questions of how, right?
Right.
Who's doing it? And how are they doing it? How many times did we show up in the morning, right? And you
Hmm.
were ready, prepared with a full blown plan, and suddenly nobody's there to really do it.
That happened way too many times, man. Way too many times.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the part, though, and I think, like you said, you dealt with the Air Force and the decisions and the who, right? It's not just okay. You ask, all right, who's going to be involved? All right, first squad, second squad, third squad, whatever, right? How are they going to be involved? How are they going to get there? How are they going to be there? But then we ask what, right? There's the what. What are you going to be doing? What are they going to be doing? And how does that impact your ability to hit that mission, right? To come in and give us the whole plan that you spent time building. And that's, dude, it drove me nuts, man. I tell you, because coming from a background that I was, in education and instruction, knowing some of the things you're dealing with, it's like there's nothing more frustrating than having a plan and then coming in and recognizing that nobody else cared about your plan.
Yeah.
And I want you to know, like, I recognize those things, and that's why I respect what you've done for us. And that's why I absolutely love that you wanted to come on here. But it breaks down the who, what, where, when, why, and how, right? And we have to ask that how question, because we can always say, okay, who is it? What is it? Right? It's so basic. But if we ask the how, okay, when are we doing it? Okay, if we're doing it at this time, how are we making sure that happens, right? So you have your plan. So on a unit level, we should have been prepared to say, okay, when do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You want to do it this day? This is how we're going to make sure people are there. And then from there, if something happens, it's all communication.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the biggest thing for you too, is being kind of out of the loop. You often didn't know what was going on. And rightfully so. I mean, I get it because you're not in the unit, right?
Yeah.
But you were heavily involved in it. So there were some levels to it that I think you should have obviously been a part of. But I want to talk further. You talked about how the Air Force, there were decisions. So what led you down that path of saying, like, hey, there's certain things that I want to do. So what led you to make the decision to separate from, let's say, everything that the Air Force gave you?
Sure. Well, first, I want to kind of touch on that last point of kind of who, what, where, when, why, how. So again, before I enlisted, I worked at a sawmill. I did some roofing. I worked in railroad type. I did very labor intensive blue collar type jobs.
Right.
And then and now my time in the Air Force, my time coaching now, the way I've seen people essentially coaching, you do study people, right? You study behavior, you study how social interactions work, and you learn these different personality types. I know there's labels for all these different personality types, but I don't have them in mind. But anyways, I bring that up because of all the different people I've seen. There are so many people that will just unquestioningly follow what is above them or what is told to them, versus some people will maybe fight back a little bit, but ultimately kind of just do what they're told. And you have some people that will really shake up the system. And those people that really want to shake up or try to shake up the system for change or for the better things, those are very rare and very, very rare, I should say. And the vast majority of people, they may put up a little bit of a fight, they kick back a little bit, but ultimately they're going to fall in the line. I think a lot of the miscommunication, the lack of why I wasn't informed when you guys weren't going to be at PT for whatever reason is because H2F was new, right? We weren't integrated into the unit quite yet. Hopefully now they're doing a little bit better with it at Fort Bragg. But anyway, the point is, because it's an old school, there's decades of how the Army does things, and it doesn't involve contracted coaches to help run PT. So because of that, they're not going to inform us, communicate with us, they're not going to work with us, even though that is the ultimate goal. Anyways,
I want to ask you real quick, based on that, if you wouldn't mind, please hold what you're going to say. So in regards to H2F, right, holistic health and fitness, right? That's what it stands for.
Yep.
So the thing we know and we have to understand, I know you've been through all the training, and I've done a lot of research on it. A lot of it, credit to you, to be honest with you, Colin. So I appreciate it. A lot of my journeys through rehab, physical therapy, understanding the holistic side of things, but holistic medicine is grounded on centuries right? Centuries of evidence, research, science, and all these other things. And so that's what either one of two things happened, right? Whoever designed the H2F program failed to really, I guess, explain the importance to the military, or it went the other side, right? The military didn't, it's just another thing. Obviously, it was enough for them to implement it into the program.
Yeah.
Right. It was enough for them to say, hey, yeah, let's do this. But then you have, like you said, you have those that are very few in between who are willing to make a change, who are willing to go beyond themselves, who are willing to, again, take time at lunch to go do some fitness workouts. Right. And so there's very few people who are willing to do that. So yeah, go on.
Some background on H2F, and I have many issues with it. What background is, I think in the 2015 to 2020, there was kind of the indoctrination period of trying H2F, the trial period of H2F. Working with coaches and dietitians and physical therapists, so that was trying to implement it and see how it worked. The Army found that the units that had the initial H2F program, they saved money and treatments. The loss of man hours was drastically reduced, and all these metrics were just so much greater than the rest of the Army. Right? The reduction of man hours, or the loss of man hours, and the treatment, all that stuff was just to save money and manpower and all that kind of stuff. So because of that, the Army wanted to just put it as wide scale as it can, as fast as it can. So they hired 300 or so coaches within the first year in 21, and they just put them on the ground. No plan, no network, just put them on the ground and let them figure it out, kind of thing. They did the same thing with athletic trainers and dietitians, and there was just no framework for it. So the way the Army
plan, right?
The way the Army implemented it, at least no plan that was communicated to the coaches, right? Anyways, also, so, and the same goes across for like the dietitians and the athletic trainers. Like, how were they supposed to be involved in the units? Wasn't communicated to us, wasn't communicated to the units we were working with. So that, and there's still a problem with the contracting, right? The contractors filled positions with unqualified people. And then the way the contractors are handled has been I'm not going to get into that one too much because that's more of a career industry thing. But anyway, so a lot of issues with how H2F has been implemented. And that's coincides with leadership being a little bit skeptical of what we're doing with them.
Right.
Yeah, anyways, what was the question you asked before we got into that whole tangent?
I'm not sure because I'm more focused now on what you already said.
Yeah. I think it was about my time in the Air Force, but
yeah, but I want to hit what you just said because I think it's not just industry specific, right? I don't think it just happens in the military because I know people who are in the education industry, quite a few, right, who see these same types of downfalls, right? And it's just a failure of execution and planning, right? Which comes into all of it. And that's another thing I kind of live on is the dedication, effort, and consistency. And it kind of goes hand in hand with that. But really, I think, and I don't know why, Colin, you hit it, you don't understand. I guess that's where some people who see things a little more logically or technically in that sense, we don't know why they're making the decisions they're making because in our head, there's so many ways you could be making these decisions differently that would be more efficient, right? And what's hard for me is I know you see some of the value, and of course there are concerns with H2F and some downfalls with it, but you're able to recognize that so you can adapt your coaching plan and everything else. And I would fully agree, right? You said one of the biggest things I wanted to touch on is that the whole point of this program was to save time and resources, right? So how many times did I not go to sick call or PT, but show up to PT with you? Right. To do some modified workouts, to do the things that could help, not so much what physical therapy is doing because they pretty much do the same thing every time, but you were giving me ways to try and grow and expand. And, even with my shoulder injury, with my back, there were things you were doing to really help modify to help me still grow and to help me still maintain that healthy and that holistic mindset. And so that, that's a good question, Colin. Kind of back to what you're saying is I see what you're saying. There's so many ways that the execution of these programs could happen differently.
Mhm.
And that happens for veterans too. And I don't know if you've tried to use any of the veteran programs that are out there.
Oh yeah, I'll get into that.
But well, okay, yeah, that's what I love, right? So I've dealt with it too, and there's so many, like, there's this fine line between, like, hey, okay, you're treading water
Mhm.
or you're drowning.
Yeah.
But we know you're treading water, and if you tread long enough, you're eventually going to start drowning.
Mhm.
But we want to wait for you to drown,
Yeah.
and
That's interesting.
so
That's good analogy.
it is, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's hard, we both kind of experienced that exit, that
Mhm.
separation, and what there is. I mean, they say there are a lot of great benefits.
Mhm.
But for somebody who might already be educated, for somebody
Mhm.
who might already have goals in life, or who already might, like me, I got out at 35, 36
Mhm.
from an injury. And so I'm already established in life. So most of what the veteran society or the associations could provide me
Mhm.
didn't apply to me because I was overqualified, right? It's that whole persona.
Mhm.
Uh, so you mentioned that. I want to ask then, let's kind of segue, if you wouldn't mind,
Mhm.
into your separation. So what was that like for you? What were the emotions, right? What were the struggles? And if there's
Sure.
somebody else who's separating, what's the best piece of advice you can give them to make sure it's simple, right? It's
Sure.
not complicated.
So for me, so one, like I didn't Air Force didn't turn out how I wanted. I wanted to do AFSOC. I tried PJ, failed to swim. It's just not a good swimmer. Tried out for Air Force has SEER specialist as his own career. Tried out for that. Essentially quit because I didn't want to do they had a bunch of medial tedious tasks such as sewing that I didn't want to do. But anyway, so like, you know, failed one, quit another, and then, at that point I'm kind of lost, and I get reclassed into pest control, which I'm sure many viewers probably aren't aware that that is a job in the Air Force. Yeah, I was
Hey,
actually
Colin, you wouldn't mind,
yeah,
real quick. Sorry, keep what you're saying. I want to
sure,
jump in here real quick for anybody on the outside looking in. A lot of people are going to look in and be like, "Oh, well, you did this and you quit." I want to look at this, Colin, as
sure,
you took the opportunity to do it. How
yeah,
many people really say yes, and how many people really say, "I'm going to do this,"
hmm,
and start doing it versus do it and then step away, right? You know your boundaries. So anybody on the outside looking in right now, I want you to be aware this isn't just a situation of like, oh, Colin quit, right? That
hmm,
as me, I've been around Colin. He's not that kind of guy, right? And so I wanted to highlight that for you, Colin, just
sure,
because I know
thank
there's
you,
somebody out there that might say that. And it's not a matter of, he tried to do it. Colin tried to do
hmm,
it. He did it. It wasn't for him, right? So Colin, I want you to go back to what you're doing, but for any of those naysayers out
hmm.
there, I really want to make sure that they understand it. It goes deeper than that, right? So go on,
Yeah,
please.
there's always context to failures or quitting. And let's be honest, everyone quits something at some point. I don't care. There's people who say I'm not a quitter, but you've quit something at some point. And I
Right.
quit for reasons that made sense to me at the time. And ultimately, the job turned out to not be something that I really wanted. Uh, but yeah, also, hey, you fail and you get up and you do try something else or you try again, whatever. Failure is part of life, so accept it,
Yeah, that's
embrace
what
it.
life's about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyway, so I got reclassed into pest control, job that didn't necessarily want. Just anyways, so after I get to my first duty station, I was at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. Kind of lost. Didn't really know what to do. Didn't know anyone, of course, as it is when you go to a new duty station. I also didn't fit in with the culture, like a lot of people in military is drinking and hanging out and
Yep.
doing stuff like that. I never wanted to drink. I was even too young at the time.
Partying. Yeah.
Partying.
Yeah.
I'm a very
I
introverted
hear you.
person. Um, and I was still into fitness and working out. So even the guys that were into working out, they had different training styles that I wanted, and they would do ego lifting
Right.
or something like that, or
Or they still went out and partied,
still went
right?
out and partied.
So,
And so anyways,
yeah,
I kind
yeah.
of felt alone and isolated because I didn't I didn't have a group of friends really. There were still people that you still
Right.
socialize with occasionally. I was a designated driver a lot because I didn't want to drink. Yeah,
But hey, props to you, Colin,
yeah,
because at least you're not letting them drive home drunk. I know that's one of the biggest
yeah.
problems we have,
Oh
right,
yeah,
in the military is is driving home drunk. So
Yeah.
again, big props to you for being that guy and
Mhm.
willing to step out and be like, hey guys, don't be dumb. Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you a ride home. Like, so I
Well,
love that.
and that goes into the family addiction things is like, you know, a lot of family members with drunk drivings and and addiction problems, and like, yeah, just I'm not gonna attempt that myself. Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, so I was actually what's referred to as a fast burner or high speed in the Air Force. Not ironically either. I was actually got all the best evaluations. I got some awards and I ranked up fast for the Air Force. By all accounts, like I was, I'm going to be a great career airman kind of thing. You do 20 years or
Right.
more, and you do great things for the Air Force. Uh,
I feel you so much there. So yeah.
However, because of what I outlined earlier, is I saw leadership styles, I saw policies in place that I just didn't like, and I didn't want to. Essentially, for me to change that, I have to work for years or decades to get to a place to actually change those things, which
Right.
I wasn't.
To make the changes that matter, right?
Yeah, and I
The
wasn't
changes that
passionate
really
enough.
make change.
I
Yeah.
wasn't passionate enough to do that. So ultimately, at my 4-year mark, actually, I knew I had 2 years left. I made the decision that I want to get out. So with 2 years left, I started making the plans. And was I anxious?
Okay.
Or a little bit? Yeah, I was definitely anxious and nervous, right? Because you kind of leaving. Like I was good at my job. I was secure in the job. So taking that jump to willingly get out and leave a very secure thing that you're good at, it was very anxiety and nerve inducing for me. Um, but in order to get through that, I just dedicated myself to making a plan and executing that plan. Um, so yeah, essentially over my last 2 years in the Air Force, that's what I did. I used the GI Bill. That was a big part of my plan. Post 9/11 GI Bill. Yeah.
Yeah,
So with
same here.
the VA benefits, they can be great. The program or the way that you get to those benefits can be quite convoluted. And that is an issue.
Complicated
Definitely,
too. Yeah.
very
Oh
much
yeah.
an
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got out.
There's so
In
many,
2000.
so much red tape on
Yeah,
it.
a
That's,
lot
I
of
think
red
that's the
tape, and it's
biggest thing.
just I want to say that maybe they've streamlined some things in the last few years. Is because when I was first getting out, they had e-benefits and My Healthy Vet, and I think it was like 3 different
Right.
websites. Yeah, e-benefits and benefits.gov and My Healthy Vet, uh, and the way you had to get your records for the GI Bill was you had to email someone, they had to send it to a person at school, and it was convoluted and kind of a pain, but you had to do what you had to do. Uh,
Right.
yeah, so about
And so I want to
VA.
touch on that
Yeah.
side, right? The VA benefits is, I and my situation a little different.
Mhm.
It's similar to you. Your focus is once you realize you had 2 years, right?
Mhm.
You started to make a plan,
Yeah.
and I love that because you don't want to just approach that. That 90-day window and
Mhm.
realize, and I saw so many soldiers do it. They're like, yeah, I'm getting out. And then
Yep.
they're like, what are you going to do after? And they're like, well, I don't know.
Yep.
Like, dude, what? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So many people have a choice, and Colin, I know you and I, because again, you got pulled away, right?
Mhm.
Because they felt like it was better to have, wasn't a battalion level, right? H2F versus specific to, isn't that how they separated, right? You guys ended up opening up either, it was either the battalion or the brigade, right? Each brigade or battalion had their own H2F coach.
Well, each brigade had an H2F
Okay.
team, and then the battalion would have a
Right.
coach or
Okay.
two. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So about that time you got pulled away is, I know you dealt with me with my shoulder injury from my
Mhm.
jump. And eventually what it came down to is I had shoulder surgery,
Mhm.
and they ended up repairing my rotator cuff.
Oh, okay.
They did, the whole AC joint, cleared it out. They did a clavicular, the AC or the clavicle, right? They did a resection on that. And so they found out that my clavicle is essentially not attached to my humerus. Is that right? What's behind the clavicle?
Yeah. Humerus
Uh,
and scapula, they all kind of meet.
yeah.
Yeah. So the clavicle just
So,
attaches to the scapula essentially.
right.
Sternoclavicular
So,
to attach sternum, and then to the acromion process of the scapula.
right. Okay. So, yeah. So it's basically a repair of that, right? So there's
Mhm.
that tendon on the other side of the clavicle that holds it down. And so they
Mhm.
want to essentially do a second surgery on it that twist ties it down.
Mhm.
And At the time, I was about to have a baby.
Yeah.
Violet, my daughter, who's now almost 2.
Hmm.
Um,
Congrats.
it was for me. It was gonna be hard. Thank you. It was gonna be hard because obviously with surgery and having a second surgery,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be able to really hold my baby, and
Sure.
that's a bonding moment you can't avoid.
Yeah.
But it eventually became a med board process for
Hmm.
me, right? I had to go through the process and go through the hoops, and in many ways, the med board process does make it easier, right? For those versus those that are separating, because I have so many extra processes that I have to go through. My medical records, my history. I had to provide a lot of things to the med board and get approved and go through that process. And then it became, okay, you're now medically retired or you're separated, right? And so there are so many ways that we get removed from this. But the only thing I think that helped me, and is the same way you talked about, when you realize this isn't for me and you need to make a plan, move forward.
Hmm.
Once I realized my med board was happening, I was like, well, shit. I looked at it like you said. You came in, you're like, man, I want to make all this change.
Hmm.
I came in telling my family like, hey, I'm gonna come in as a PFC. I worked my way real quick up to specialist,
Hmm.
and then I got hurt. Right, I got delayed on getting sergeant, but given I have a degree and I've got a master's in business, and I'm working on a
Hmm.
master's in education,
Nice.
I had the ability to go the officer route, right? And
Hmm.
that was kind of part of my dream, and then it got
Hmm.
halted, right?
Sure.
But in the same way, right? And the whole scenario can be different, but we both hit this bridge, right? Whether we had the choice or not, you had to make a decision and you had to then plan for it, right?
Hmm.
And once you realize like, okay, hey, this isn't for me, I want to start planning what my exit looks like, and I want to make sure I'm set up right after I get out to do what I want to do.
Hmm.
And that leads me back to what you said initially, right? One of the things you built a love for was powerlifting, just really health in general, right?
Hmm.
I think is something that hit you hard.
Yeah.
That I think that's what really, I feel like you feel like you could have made a better impact, right? I think
Hmm.
that's, in my opinion, that's what I see,
Hmm.
is you had all these ideas and all these ways that you wanted to make change, but they were always brushed over,
Hmm.
right? So the best way you can make change is by implementing it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Getting the education you need to get and following the path that you followed. So
Hmm.
I want to ask you about your planning. So once you realize like, hey, this isn't for me,
Hmm.
what was your planning process like? Like, how was your mindset at that point?
So, at some points, you gotta think like, hey, what do I want to do when I get out then? So I explored different avenues. I looked into, maybe going to school for like wildlife ecology. Like that was, kind of a former passion of mine when I was very young, but I kind of suppressed it. There weren't really any schools nearby that had any degree programs similar to that. So I looked at another passion, fitness. I led in the Air Force. I was a PTL, PT leader. I led remedial PT for every day for 4 or 5 years. Squadron PT,
Right.
which is squadron's kind of the equivalent of a battalion. Um,
Right.
but anyways, so yeah, through leading PT, I'm like, man, I really do love fitness. So I looked at like exercise science degrees and ultimately decided on pursuing a degree in exercise science. Then it was just a matter of then planning out like what school do I want to go to after I get out. Um, what kind of career in exercise do I want? Do I want to just be a personal trainer? Do I want to be a strength and conditioning coach? Do I want to be an exercise physiologist? I ultimately decided on strength and conditioning because I love sports. Then that eventually transitioned to more so being a tactical strength and conditioning coach, working with military and first responders because ultimately I think they're the population that needs it the most. One,
Right.
because their their physical performance can literally be the difference between life and death. Oftentimes these
100%.
careers are doing it for decades upon decades, getting broken and still relying on their physical performance. Essentially, I think tactical personnel, military first responders need strength and conditioning the most of any population as opposed to athletics or general population. This population needs it the most. So over a couple of years after I went to school and transitioned out, I kind of leaned more towards the tactical side of strength and conditioning for those reasons. Um, yeah,
Right.
so it help them perform better, but also help their longevity. So when they retire after 20, 30 years in that service, that they're not just completely broken and they can still perform and do family stuff. And, essentially the mindset I always have is when you're 60 or 70, you want to get around and play around with your grandkids kind of thing, right? There's
Right.
so
Absolutely.
many veterans or first responders that just can't do that because of poor training, poor leadership that can influence poor training. But yeah, so many reasons. So that was a big
Poor
part of my
posture.
plan as I got out. Yeah.
So I love that, Colin, and thank you for sharing that
Mhm.
as, kind of your path to getting out. And I think that's the way, like, a lot of us should look at it, because, one of the things I've approached, and it's hard for me to accept, and I've looked at it differently now as I explore, how things are going to change for me.
Mhm.
I don't have an option. I don't have the ability to keep my service going. I don't have the ability to say, like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this,
Mhm.
and there's so many things I had to change physically, how I, played with my daughters, or,
Mhm.
I used to love playing sports, right? So there's certain sports I can't really play anymore.
Mhm.
It's like playing golf with my shoulder. I can't really play golf with my
Mhm.
shoulder, but I can play frisbee golf because my right
Yeah, there
arm's
you go.
okay. So it's finding those ways to adapt. And I love, like you were saying, it's really finding the enjoyments in life.
Mhm.
And you're going to always find struggles. You're going to always find situations where it is tough, right? But find that silver lining, that point where there is the joy. Because as
Mhm.
much as you sit there and keep closing off like all the negative, and that was the hardest part for me, because I was so mad. I didn't have the choice.
Mhm.
I couldn't say, like, yeah, I want to get out, or I don't want to get out. It was
Mhm.
like, no, you're getting out. And it's
Yeah.
like, dude, but it was a relief in so many ways, right? It's like you have a decision looming. And I've talked to mental health specialists and other things like that. They talk about the science behind somebody who's awaiting, like, trial, for example,
Mhm.
like somebody who's waiting a decision from a judge, or a trial, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
for their sentencing. And they're so anxious and so distraught until they find out the answer. And while the answer may not be what they want to hear, they now have an answer, and
Mhm.
so for me, it was kind of relieving to know, like, okay, they have their answer. It's like my biggest concern at that point was whether or not they would give me what I'm deserved,
Mhm.
or whatever it might be. And so luckily I didn't have an extremely difficult process, but like you, as soon as I knew that this wasn't going to happen for me, I
Mhm.
started planning. I started researching all the
Mhm.
different
Yep.
anything, right? All the doctrines, anything that you could know about the medboard process, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to be set up for success. And I think that's important that you said that, because regardless of the decision you make and the path that you choose, you need to make sure that you're prepared. You need to make
Mhm.
sure you have a plan and understand, like, hey, if this doesn't work out for me, how can I pivot, right? How can I adapt to the adversity? And so I wanted to ask you, Colin, on the adversity side
Mhm.
of things, when you first got out, you made your decision, you planned, you had all these things lined up. Was there any adversity you ran into when you first got out?
Um, hmm. For me, yes and no. I mean, there wasn't any obvious adversity in my opinion. So I went back to essentially I went immediately right into being a full-time student. So being a little bit older as a full-time student at
Right.
25 was I was an
Okay, 25, yeah.
adjustment. I wouldn't say it was too much of adversity. But I was prepared and I
And you
planned
went to
and
on campus or
yeah, I was on
on campus
campus.
school?
Yeah, I was on
Okay.
campus. Um, I'd
That's
say
definitely different, being a little
yeah.
older, yeah.
Uh, adversity wise, there's some family stuff. There's still some more addiction stuff going on. Um, and so
That's tough, yeah.
that's some adversity, not necessarily related to being veteran. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into the family addiction saga. But if you're
I
familiar with
respect that.
addiction, if there are veterans that are struggling with addiction, uh, it's hell to even see it, even witness it. Um, but
Yeah,
it's up to the person who is addicted. They have to seek out the help. They can ask for help.
you can't
They
force them,
can,
and
and
that's,
people and
yeah.
the loved ones can try to force help upon them until that person is ready for help. Nothing will change. And sometimes the
Well, in
help,
many ways, forcing it, right, is what what destroys that relationship, and that's
For,
it's hard to find that line,
forcing it. Also the way people try to help. It's like, hey, try to give them money, give them a place to stay. Sometimes that just enables them, and it keeps the cycle going and going.
Right.
So yeah. Without too much context, you might be able to paint a picture with that. So if you're having addiction or know someone with addiction, they have to seek out the help. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. But anyway, so as far as my own adversity, as getting out, it is a shock to see the difference of personalities. Because I went in at 19, and honestly, I think it was
Yeah.
more of my personality being significantly different from so many. Not to say I'm special, but like I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to party, like, and this was so the same thing as in the Air Force. I had the same thing when I first started in the Air Force, and when I got to college, is I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to party, and what also surprised me is everyone was vaping in 2018. I don't know, and I didn't know that I didn't even know vaping was like I didn't know vaping existed, and yet half the students I
Yeah.
encountered in school were vaping. It was just weird. But anyway, so adversity wise is more so a personal social thing for me, to help to integrate into what I would just call normal society. Is I had the same problem with the Air Force too. So I don't know if those are unique struggles or I'm sure there's other people. I know there's a lot of introverted people, a lot of people with social anxiety and stuff similar to me that probably do
Right.
struggle. Maybe they struggle. Maybe they just kind of say screw it and go and jump in anyways, regardless of what they're feeling. But yeah, so that in terms of adversity, that's what I've struggled with when I got out. And I don't think I struggled with it too much because I think I've made peace with who I am as a person.
You had a plan, right?
Yeah,
You had a path to where you wanted to go.
yeah.
So I definitely see that.
So I think, and also learning to be proud of who you are actually and embracing that has been a big part of my journey. Which is a lot of that has come through my own fitness.
Right.
Obviously I'm a little bit of an exercise workout type of junkie, and I've accepted that, embraced it, and also explored the different avenues of myself that I've suppressed for many years. It's very important to do that. Some people may be able to do that on their own through exercise. And I would love to advocate for that, but
Right.
some people may need therapy. And that's
Right.
not a bad thing
Somebody
either.
you need to
I
talk
think
about it, right? Absolutely.
if there's a avenue that helps you explore to be more proud of who you are and embrace your passions and your personality, because I think there's so many people who aren't truly authentic to themselves even. Yeah, I don't
Right.
know.
No,
I think a funny
I
thing.
can't agree with that more, Colin.
A funny thing. I'm not much of a video game guy, but a funny anecdote that I call people sometimes are NPCs. Right, that stands for non-playable character, as far as I'm aware. I think there are so
just
many people.
autonomous, right?
Yeah, so many people that kind of go through life, and this it's fine if you're cool doing this. But
Right.
based on how society and even the VA, how all these large institutions, how they operate, they act like you are an NPC, right? So my time, I'm so
Just a
actually
number. Yeah,
very
just a number.
recently,
Yeah.
I was going through a disability claim because my sleep is just horrible, and I think it has
Oh.
something to do with all the pesticides that I was exposed to. That's my
Right.
theory, anyways. So, anyways,
Which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense.
yeah, right. So I was claiming sleep apnea and insomnia, and I have now had records of, hey, I'm diagnosed with sleep apnea and insomnia. And my sleep is just horrible. It's hard, and it affects my daily life. It affects my work. But the VA denied it. They said it because I didn't get,
Right.
because I didn't have any connection to it in service. Like there's no
Service
record,
yeah.
no record of sleep problems. And so I say
See,
that
that's
because
the part that drives me nuts. That right there.
I say
Yeah.
that because the VA is going to see me as he's just a number. There's no connection to service, so deny his claim, even if it affects his disability or his income. Like because my sleep, I have
Right.
more things I want to do for work, but I can't do
Right.
that because I fall
It's a
asleep when I work
struggle.
I work at the
Yeah.
computer. I fall asleep. So and
Yeah.
and even sometimes dozing during while driving, which is dangerous. But it happens, you know. Like I said,
Right.
it's a legitimate issue that I'm having, but the VA just disregards it because it, you know, isn't service connected according to them. Um,
Right. And
which is
that's the whole point of
yeah.
this, Colin. I want to shed light on that, right?
Mhm.
Because there's so many veterans out there that
Mhm.
are dealing with that same thing. And I've
Yep.
talked to so many people, and I've, going through my own claim situations,
Mhm.
and really the just being worried, right, that I submit this claim and it's just going to get kicked back, even though I've
Yeah.
supplied everything I feel is sufficient,
Right. Same.
especially when it comes down to like service connection, right?
Mhm.
That's the biggest problem for most VA claims. And that's the thing I learned before I got out is like, even if I got 0%, as long as I got my service connection,
Yeah.
right? As long as it was there and it was recognized, even if I didn't get anything from it, it meant later I could still approach it.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, I think, for everybody. And that's where I'm thankful that I did go through the med board process, because I went through all my evals and I could have been like, yep, no, I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
But I hit 90%. And I was like, okay, well, they still service connected this, they still did that, they still did all these things.
Yeah.
But the only reason I hit 90%, like you were talking about, is I planned for it, because
Yeah.
I knew it was happening. Even when I didn't have like solidified, like,
Mhm.
yes, you're getting med boarded. As soon as I heard the word med boarded, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Huh, what's med boarded?"
Right.
I that's immediately, I want to
Mhm.
learn what it is,
Yeah.
So I learned everything I could about it.
So
And I'm thankful that I knew that. And I want to
mhm.
definitely, keep what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that people really understand to do your research and
Mhm.
to understand what you're getting into
Mhm.
before you get into it. But yeah, Colin, go ahead.
So, and I say this next statements, or these next few statements, with a little bit of hesitance, but man, you got to get everything checked out. I mean, because I was a young airman and I had the mindset of, oh, I don't want to be on a profile. I don't want to get anything checked out. Now I didn't have any
Yeah.
catastrophic injuries. I had some back pain, and some knee pain when I was in the Air Force. But I never even thought about getting checked out. I'm like, I
Right.
can manage it on my own, and I did. And I did fine personally. And then the
Which is
sleep
what a
thing.
lot of people do,
And
right?
exactly. But I personally would have felt guilty going on profile or something. And honestly, like if you have something bothering you and you go on profile, you need to get it checked out. Now I say that with hesitance
Right.
because there are people and soldiers that will milk the absolute shit out of the system. Pardon my language, I just want to get the point across.
We know. I already know. You and I used to talk about that, so
Yeah.
we know. It's
So
like I was saying. There's people that go to sick call and just sit
yeah.
there and wait for 2 hours, or there's people that show up and try to do what they can.
Yeah, and
So definitely.
and I didn't know that I really had a big sleep problem at the time. I did have, I knew I struggled with sleeping, but I didn't really think of it until I didn't really think of it until I had a family, even, because I'm recently engaged and have a stepdaughter now, and
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
congrats, man.
thank you,
I was
thank
gonna
you.
actually ask you about that, so I'm glad you brought
Yeah,
it up.
so I didn't really think much of my sleep issues until I had a family, and until it could, impact them. Um, So I never got anything checked out. I think I had these sleep problems for many years, even in the Air Force. But yeah. So, anyways, I never got anything checked out, and because of that, there's no service connection.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, anyone who's in and listening, like, you all have to get your stuff checked out, regardless of how minuscule you think it may be. Like I said, I say it with hesitance 'cause I don't want people to take advantage of the system. But
Right.
if you also want
Well,
to
and
be
that
taken
was
care of
Colin.
afterwards,
Absolutely. And I want to throw that out there because I know I reached out to you because
mhm,
I didn't even necessarily need your assistance. And I appreciate you willing
mhm,
to at least give me documentation and give me
mhm,
reference in that sense. But I reached out to you, right, and said, hey, you and I worked through this and I may
mhm,
need this. I
yeah,
never needed it, but it became a situation where I just wanted to make sure all
yeah,
my, my T's were crossed, my I's were dotted, right? I
mhm,
wanted to make sure if something came back, I at least had recommendation or at least documentation.
mhm.
And I think that's the biggest struggle and the problem
Yeah,
that the HTF program misses, right?
yeah,
If you go to sick call and if you go to whatever, battalion sick call,
sure.
H2F, right? Those are all documented.
Yeah,
But I show up to PT every morning and work with you and do modified workouts.
yep,
None of that's documented,
no,
right? So that was really what I was looking for is
mhm,
if it came down to it, I might need reference because
yeah,
there literally is no documentation of
Yeah.
you and I doing modified
Yep.
workouts, you know? So that is one side that I would say is missing.
Hmm.
Absolutely. But definitely, I want you to keep going. I just wanted to highlight that side of it.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought a really good point is doing modified workouts. So just because and this is maybe going to a larger issue, um, is even though you get your injured on profile, you still should train. You still can. First off, you can train, and you absolutely should train. There are ways to train
Right.
around it, to modify your workouts, um, and that's where the coaches for H2F or any of the branches that have H2F type coaches, that's where they come in. They're supposed to help modify these workouts to the best of their ability
Right.
based on the profile. Now, the larger
Or
issue
there's
with
a
that
lack of
is
documentation. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
profiles are, I'm gonna be blunt with it. Those profiles, most of them, 90% of those profiles are just horribly written. Horribly written.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
and you know, apologies to any medical providers that may take offense to that, but when you have someone
Well,
who
maybe
has,
they should check what they're doing. You know,
I mean, I've had
it is true though.
had a
It's
soldier with a broken finger. Their profile verbatim said can't lift more than 10 pounds. With just because of a broken finger, right? They can lift more than 10 pounds with their other hand. They can lift.
what about yeah, exactly.
I
What
can
about mother hand? Yeah,
I can put a
exactly.
safety bar. I can put a safety bar on them. They
Yeah.
can hold it with one hand. The other hand doesn't have to hold it at all.
Well,
And I can load up
don't you
their
do
legs. They can
like
do leg press.
wrist lifts?
They can
You
do
can put a bar across the wrist, right?
yeah. They can. There's different ways to where I can load up their arm without having them involve their grip.
Right.
But because the profile said can't lift more than 10 pounds, they could just walk. That's
You got
that's
to follow that. Right,
legally.
exactly.
That's all they're pretty much allowed to do: stand and walk.
Yeah.
And theoretically, they could even run. They could run and jump. But they couldn't lift more than 10 pounds, so they couldn't jump either because of the
But
impact.
when I run, I move my hand and my finger hurts, so I can't run.
Um,
That's the thing, right? It's
so the profiles, and that was probably the most egregious example I can think of. But there's other ones where
oh
someone
yeah.
hurts their knee, but they say no lower body lifting for the next month, right? If someone hurts their knee,
You
I
could
can
do
still
calf
do it.
raises.
I can still do maybe calf raises or a hinging based movement,
Right.
like a deadlift of some sort maybe, or there's lower body exercises that don't necessarily involve the knee bending where I can still load the lower body kind of thing. Or I can probably do some isometrics.
And see, that's
I
why
don't know.
right,
Yeah.
and that's why I enjoyed working with you, Colin, because I love the way that you think about it, right? In your brain, you're like, okay, well, you can't do this, but you can still do all these other things
Hmm.
that will keep your body ready. And that was the thing that worried me the most, when I was unable to do certain movements. It's
Hmm.
like, well, now I'm going to let my unit down. I'm going to let my team down,
Yeah.
and so I always pushed myself so hard to the point where I would hurt myself.
Yeah.
I would, by the end of the day, couldn't move. But for me, I was in that mindset, like I couldn't let anybody down. I couldn't
Hmm.
not be there.
Yeah.
And like you said, I was pretty high speed. And
Hmm.
I was older, so I had a point to prove,
Yeah.
but I also had to be better than all these young guys, and
Hmm.
so I ended up with honor grad in basic training. And
Hmm.
so I was high speed like that. I was always looking for the schools. I was
Yeah.
always looking for the opportunities. I really wanted it. I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow. And that's why, again, I enjoyed working with you because you continue to challenge us, those that
Hmm.
actually wanted it,
Yep.
right? You challenged us to keep pushing ourselves, right?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. You got pain? Do this then.
Hmm.
Oh, that's painful? Okay, do this, right? So you were always there to work with us. And I love that about you, Colin. And I think that's probably the most important thing out of this I want to gather is like your time in the military really established who you were, right? I want to go
Hmm.
back to when you were younger, right? You talked about how you didn't really have a lot of self-confidence. You didn't really have a lot of like oomph behind who you were
Hmm.
because you were worried of judgment. You were worried of being bullied. And I feel you, man.
Hmm.
There's so many parts of me like where I want to be me, but I know like if I'm me, there's certain people that'll judge it. They'll say something and I
Hmm.
really don't want to hear that. But
Yeah.
now I'm at the point in my life where it's like, screw that,
Yeah.
I don't really care anymore, It's so
Yeah.
that's power, that's really where it comes from.
Hmm.
So would you say like when you were younger, right, your self-consciousness, your how you were so internal in
Hmm.
yourself, and I feel the same way, right? I feel like if I say anything, it doesn't really matter, you know. And we're both very intelligent. Like, I know you're intelligent based on my conversations with you.
Mhm.
And like I said, with the whole idea that you're not just willing to close off a door. And I think that's one of the things I want to focus on most with the Tavern After Dark
Mhm.
is not closing off the doors, because we have all these dreams that we want to do. And I talked about it in the last episode, and it becomes like a not yet statement,
Mhm.
or not right now, right? We reframe how we look at something so that we're not closing off our dreams. We're not
Mhm.
closing off our passions. We're not closing off those doors. But the biggest problem, Colin, and I want to ask you real quick before I jump into something else. So I weird enough, I didn't ever know this, but do you have an internal dialogue in your head, kind of like where you like have a conversation with yourself?
Oh
Or
yeah.
there's some people that
Oh yeah.
don't. Does that blows me away that
I've heard that,
there's
and that is very kind of flabbergasting to me. I couldn't imagine my life without my internal dialogue being able to conversate in my head. And sometimes there's like
yeah,
conflicting voices in there. Um, but
right.
yeah, and essentially, yeah. Sometimes I've said to myself that I'm some of what I'm trying to do is to prove myself wrong, because of negative voices
I,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so I don't want to cut our conversation short. I have a lot more I'd like to talk about, but time with the fiance is very
It's
important.
up to
So
you,
gotta get do dinner.
Colin.
Um,
Yeah, I know. You got to get dinner for
if
sure.
you don't mind me, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, you're
Okay,
good. You're
just
good.
a little you mentioned like trying to have like a quote or something to kind of sign off on, and this isn't really a quote, but things I struggled to find places where I belong, or even, I mean, honestly, I've questioned. A lot of times I didn't want to be here in this world, kind of thing. So read between the lines there. I
That's
don't like
tough.
saying it
Yeah,
out loud. Uh, so
you don't have to. I get you.
with that in mind, I've always thought like I don't want to be here. Um, I didn't choose to be here. But my thought process over these many years, many struggles is I am here, so I'm going to make the best of it. Um, and if everyone kind of takes that mindset, I think that can help a lot of people. So yeah, that's kind of a thing I'd like to leave people off on. But I'd love to be on another episode sometime.
Perfect, Colin. I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I really thank you for taking time to spend, whatever time you have with us. I know you're busy, but I really hope this podcast helps somebody, and your story reaches out to somebody
Hmm.
to, like you said, we don't need to say it. We all know it.
Hmm.
We struggle. We deal with things, and that's the whole point, right? The Tavern After Dark is to talk about the things we don't
Hmm.
really want to talk about, but we know are important, right? We
Yeah.
know that there's validity behind them. And the last thing I want to leave off with
Hmm.
here is kind of what we were talking about before. You mentioned it, that mental mindset, right?
Hmm.
That voice in our head. There's so much of that voice that takes us away from our dreams, takes us away
Hmm.
from achieving what we know, like deep down in our heart, we're possible of.
Hmm.
But our head is like, nah, or like everybody else out there, like you said, somebody's telling you can't do it,
Yeah.
or even in your own head, you're telling you
Hmm.
can't do it. Now you have that power to prove yourself wrong. You have
Yeah.
the power to prove everybody else wrong. But I want to talk about this, and I'll give you, like I said, I want to get you off to dinner. But I call it ICP, and when we talk about ICP, it's understanding the breakdown of the internal command process, right? Our head automatically goes to negative.
Hmm.
And so in many ways, anytime my mind goes to negative, and I'll keep this as PG-13 as I can, I tell myself to shut the F up,
Ooh, you
because
froze
in
on me.
my head, I'm telling myself like, nah, you can't do this. It's kind of like this podcast, doing the podcast, I had so much doubt about whether or not I should do it,
Hmm.
or but in my head, I'm like, I know it would help somebody,
Sure.
so shut the F up, dude,
Hmm.
and do it.
Yeah.
And so I call it the internal command process. And like you said, you have that same internal dialogue. Some people don't. But for those that do have that internal dialogue, there's so much power in shutting up that negative
Hmm.
dialogue in your head and focusing on what's important in front of you.
Yeah.
So I want to leave off before we leave here. Colin, anything else you want to let our viewers know? Anybody who's listening, anything else?
Uh, I don't know. There's always things I want to leave off of. Lead by example. Be the change you want to be. There's always cliches. Uh, yeah, try to, prove yourself wrong. Always be open-minded, be willing to grow. But of course, with that thought of being open-minded, be willing to stand for your principles and what you believe in too. So I don't know, bunch of
I
cliches there
love
to
that.
end, but yeah, it was great, great talking to you, catching up to with
That's
Josh.
right.
Um,
Colin, thank you so
yeah,
much. And
of course,
again, I would love, like you said, if you want to join us back, we've got a few guests lined up,
sure,
but I definitely want to get you back in here so we can dive more into your story. But you
sure.
go enjoy your dinner. Again, everybody, this is Tavern After Dark. Thank you so much for joining us. Colin, thank you again. I appreciate it. Again, any view, like, subscribe, anything that helps us, I appreciate it. Please share this with somebody who does need to hear it. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you,
Colin,
brother.
thank you again.
Yep, have a good one.
You take care. Bye-bye.